We've got Mr. Lawrence Hall today on June the 11th, 2014. And Mr. Hall was the state FFA president in 1953 through 1954. And we're going to let him start out by telling us a little bit about his early experiences being in the FFA and where he was a high school student and how he got to even be thinking. Did you grow up on a farm?
Yes, I did. I grew up on a small farm in Caldwell County. We had mother and dad and 4 of us children. I had an older brother, and then I have a twin brother and a younger sister. And we grew up on a little farm that we bought in 1940. 92 acres. That's what we produced, the food and the money that we lived on and went to high school. They got all of us through high school. The others didn't go to college. I decided when I got out of high school that I could go to Murray, work, and get along just about as well as those people that graduated and took a job at the grocery store or at the service station or what have you. So I went to school, Murray, and worked my way through 2 years there, and then went to UK, finally graduated, and when I got out and went to Elizabethtown and took the job with Kentucky Utilities, I believe I owed $1,500 on my college education, which I thought was awfully good to get through and just have that small amount of debt at the graduation.
Thinking about being the state FFA president. So you go, Mr. Hall.
In '49, I believe I went into the Butler High School in Princeton, and there's where I started my FFA program under Mr. James D. Maddox, that was the teacher of agriculture. I had not been a real good student up to that point, I'll have to admit. I just wasn't interested and wasn't working very hard on anything. But in the ag program, from the very beginning, I got interested and started working on it, and Mr. Maddox was the best teacher I ever had. He led me to do things that I didn't think that I could do. In that program at Butler, I got to be a committee chairman, I got to be an officer in the chapter, I got to be a district officer, I got to be a district president, and those were things that I didn't think that I could do, but with his encouragement, I worked at it and it worked out real well, and Future Farmers from there on till today has meant a whole lot from there to me.
How many seniors were there in Butler High School when you graduated, roughly? How many graduating?
I believe there were 56 of us that graduated in that class, and we haven't had a reunion for about 12 years. We don't have nearly all of them left anymore. We've lost some of them along the way.
What made Mr. Maddox a good teacher in your opinion?
Mr. Maddox was a country boy from Ohio County down on the Green River. I can't remember the little Horse Branch, I believe was the little place that he was from, and he was just a hard-working fellow with a whole lot of discipline, and I needed that. And anybody that remembers Mr. Maddox, it didn't matter whether he was a student, whether he was another teacher, or what, Mr. Maddox believed in one way of doing things, and he didn't hesitate to lead students to believe the way he did. And that was good for us, and particularly for me, I needed Mr. Maddox to lead me in what I was doing.
Did you maintain contact with him later in life, or was that kind of the end of it whenever you?
No, I stayed in contact with him and would see him at state convention and always sat down and eat with him. He'd come to the awards banquet and I always sat with him and ate with him. And then when he died and they had his funeral in Frankfort, I went up for that. Jane didn't expect that I would be there, but I knew about it, and Mr. Maddox had meant enough to me that I felt that I wanted to be there, and I'm glad that I went. And I still have a great deal of respect for Mr. Maddox and his family and what he and future farmers meant to me.
When you were in high school, did you go to the FFA camp?
Yes, I did. I went to FFA camp before you can remember FFA camp being what it is today. When I first went, it was the old CCC camp. And we stayed in old CCC barracks and ate in old CCC barracks. And when I got through high school and out, and then got to be state president in '53, during that term as state president, they had a fund drive to raise $250,000 to convert that old CCC camp into what it is today, which is an outstanding FFA facility for any state in the country, and it's been a good one and helps a tremendous amount of young people. We had, when I went the first time, we stayed in those old CCC camps. I believe they had already built the swimming pool, but none of the other cabins or kitchen facilities or administration building did they have. So, but it was a good experience.
I believe you provided some funds sometime in the past, haven't you? That if a kid didn't have the money, that they could be financed to go to the camp?
There was, about 15 years ago, Mr. Maddox had served his time teaching, served his time at camp, and then went on to Frankfort and served in VOAG department and had retired. And I wanted to do something at that time, so I gave some funds to make scholarships available to kids who couldn't go to camp. And I thought that was something that was needed to be done, and I still think there are probably kids who need some help to do things of that nature in the FFA.
Do you remember any of the activities as a student when you went to camp that you participated in? I mean, how the camp operated?
We had our classes that tried to teach us what we were to do as chapter officers, what we were to do as committee chairman, and all of those things. We had some speakers. Of course, we had some time to swim. We had some time to play some baseball and that sort of thing. But it was just a good time for everybody. And then they selected campers of the week that I know I got a patch with a star on it as a star camper, which thrilled me to, because I never was much of an athlete. I'm too clumsy and too fat, but I enjoyed it. It has been a good experience, I think, for everyone to have the opportunity
And Jim
to
Maddox
go to camp, and I still believe in the camp program, and
And your ag teacher, Jim Maddox, was the longtime director of that, as you know, and he had a lot to do with it being such a fine program.
the experience that I had that year as state president when we had the fund drive, I think added to my experience as state president.
Yeah.
Because we had a fella, Bob Hensley from Louisville, that was vice president of the Green River Steel over at Owensboro, was a lawyer in a law firm in Louisville that was chairman of our fund drive, and then we had a lot of other people involved in that fund drive, and I got to know those people. And at the end of the year in 1954, I didn't know every ag teacher in the state of Kentucky, but I had gotten to know or meet most all of them, and that was a real addition to my experience as state president, was getting to meet and know all of those people. Not only those people, but the leaders from the various counties that helped us in that fund drive.
Did you go to the national convention while you were an FFA member?
Yes, I did. I went 3 times to the national convention in Kansas City. We would leave Princeton and drive to Columbia, Missouri, about 40 miles before we got to Kansas City, and spend the night there and then get up and go into Kansas City. That was a good experience. We got to meet and some national officers. We got to have President Eisenhower to come and speak. That was before most of the future farmers today can remember, but he came and spoke to us at the national convention, and Jimmy Dillon then served as national president in '54, the last trip that I made out there, and that was a good
When
experience.
you came to the state convention in those days, was it in Louisville?
State convention was held at the Southern Hotel, across the street from the Watterson Hotel.
When you got to be state president, did you have to go through an interview procedure?
Had to go through an interview procedure, and had some students, had some district supervisors, teachers, and that sort of thing, and I knew that little manual pretty well, what was in it, and had studied that, and had been involved in chapter meeting contests, and been involved twice at the state on the public speaking contest, and pretty well familiar with the organization. We went up the night before the rest of our chapter came. I went up, and one fella went with me, and then there was a fella that was state sentinel the year before I had applied for an office, and he was staying in the room with us. I have to tell this one. I survived it, but he had a date over Cox's Creek. He came back to the room about 11:30 at night, and he thought it was time for us to wake up. The other boy and I had gone to sleep because I had interviews the next day for state office, and I wanted to be sharp and alert and know what was going on. He took a pillow and hit me hard enough to wake me up. And I woke up aggravated enough at him for waking me up that I hit him hard enough with that pillow to break the feathers out of it. Little Jimmy Anderson, I like him today, but he woke up and he'd take a handful of feathers and go over to the air conditioner and drop them. You can imagine what I was gonna be in for when Mr. Mattis got there the next day.
I can believe it.
He'd drop them. When he got through, we had feathers a foot deep on that floor. And I thought my interview for state office could well be over. Even though I didn't start it, I did hit the fellow with the pillow and broke it. But Anderson's the one, Mr. Maddox got in the next day and he took a look at that. And he could be as serious and stern
I know.
as I was scared to death. He asked everybody a few questions, and when he got through, he was convinced that I wasn't the one that started and caused a mess. I was hoping he would see it that way, because that's the way I thought it turned out, that I wasn't responsible for starting it and wasn't responsible. So he let me go ahead to my interview for state office, and they never did know the problem that I was in with my ag teacher, but we got through that, got through fine, and then Thursday at noon was elected state president of Future Farmers of Kentucky, which was the greatest thing in my life. For whatever I may do yet, or whatever I may have done, my experience with Future Farmers.
Mr. Hall, are you one of those people like a lot of that we talk to that still have their FFA jacket?
I do not have my FFA jacket anymore. It wasn't big enough. For some reason it shrunk. And the Caldwell County chapter, where Butler High School was consolidated in with Caldwell County, and they wanted to put together a display of people who had served in different offices, and they wanted my state FFA jacket. And I told them I'd be glad for them to have that. It didn't quite fit anymore.
So it is somewhere.
It's at Caldwell County Future Farmer chapter, and they used it on display occasionally to show who came from there.
What skills did you think you might have picked up from being an ag student and an FFA member that served you well later in life?
I think everything that I picked up. In fact, when I got out of the 8th grade and went into high school, with the record I had in school, there wasn't a very bright future for people like me. In fact, I'm sure I was a disappointment and a surprise to a whole lot of people that things turned out as well as they did. But Future Farmers has been a tremendous experience for me. It got me interested and got me working on things that I had never worked on before. And I had to do some of the other schoolwork in order to be able to do what I wanted to do in Future Farmers. So it was a tremendous experience for me all through life, and it still is a help to me.
Have you still been? How did being an FFA member kind of impact your future life after you got out of school? What skills did it help you to have, Mr. Hall?
Everything that I have done, I have to give credit to the Future Farmers, and I do, because they gave me the opportunity to do things that I didn't think I could do when I was in high school. I went on then from graduating from high school, worked on pipeline construction for a while, and then went to Murray State for a couple of years in college and transferred to the University of Kentucky then and graduated in '59. And after I got out of high school or college then, I went to work for Kentucky Utilities in Elizabethtown, Kentucky, and worked for them for about 5 years, and left there and got into the construction business and worked at that until I retired when I was 48. So I had right good luck in the construction business. We did guardrail and seeding and sodding and fence and that type work on highway jobs in Kentucky and Tennessee and Indiana and Illinois and Arkansas and Alabama. So we spread around and did work over several states and had several crews working. It was hard work, but it was a good living.
Have you still been involved with the FFA organization at the state level in the last recent years?
I have sponsored a diversified livestock program for, I'm gonna guess 30 years that I have sponsored that and put some money into it. I have attended some chapter meetings and banquets and been involved a little bit, not a great deal on the local level, but would get back to camp occasionally for some program.
Have you been on that FFA Foundation board?
I am not anymore.
But you have been. Well,
I was in the beginning of the
I
state
was too.
FFA
You were a
board,
founding
yeah.
member of it then.
Many years ago. It's been 6 or 7 years, I guess, since I've been on that board, but board has done the job that we expected and wanted the board to do when we were trying to get it organized and going, and I think it's been a big asset to the Future Farmer organization is to have the FFA Foundation.
You've lived in Elizabethtown a long time. Have you been involved in any community activities as a member of the Hardin County Elizabethtown community?
I have been in Elizabethtown since 1960. When I got there, I was working with KU, and that put me involved with 4-H and Future Farmer programs and those people, and I worked with those, and then I worked with farmers that had electrical problems, so excuse me, I got to know those farmers and worked with them. We were involved in the Elizabethtown Baptist Church, Severance Valley Baptist Church in Elizabethtown, which I believe is the oldest church west of the Allegheny Mountains. I believe I'm correct in that. And so we served there and deacon and chairman of trustees and moderator and that sort of thing. And then I served with Chamber of Commerce and the Ag Council in the county that built our new extension office, served on the Farm Bureau Board of Directors. So with what little I knew about parliamentary procedure, when I got into something, they quite often elected me as an officer so I wouldn't be in the audience causing problems. I think that was their rationale, and it made sense.
You was also involved at Campbellsville College, weren't you?
I served on the board of directors of Campbellsville College for about 30 years. That was an awfully good experience for me. I started out when Campbellsville had 548 students. And when I left just a couple of years ago, on the board, we had 3,600 students at Campbellsville. So it had, over those 30 years, it had grown quite a bit and built several new buildings it's still doing well. A good educational institution.